There are days that quietly pass across the calendar. And then there are days that redraw the direction of your life without asking for permission. Today belongs to the second kind. This is not simply another astrological influence moving through the sky. It is not another date that will blend into the rest of the month. Today, June 25th, marks the point where the emotional story you have been living reaches a threshold that cannot be crossed twice. Something lasting is being established within the foundation of your relationships. You may not recognize the significance immediately. In fact, many people will only understand what changed after several weeks have passed, when they suddenly notice that the way they love, trust, and connect no longer resembles the life they were living before. The reason is remarkably precise. Today, Venus forms an exact trine with Saturn at 13 degrees of Leo and Aries. This alignment does not drift through your life with quiet uncertainty. It arrives with the unmistakable certainty of something becoming final. Imagine a door that closes with complete certainty, or an agreement placed before you that becomes permanent the instant your signature touches the page. That is the emotional atmosphere surrounding this moment. What is taking shape now reaches far beyond romance alone. The entire framework supporting your closest relationships is being redesigned from the inside outward. The people already standing beside you, the individuals who are about to enter your life, and every connection you have been questioning will now reveal its true condition. Some bonds will prove capable of carrying the future. Others will expose weaknesses that can no longer remain hidden. Every relationship is approaching a defining moment where it will either gain lasting stability or reveal fractures that have existed beneath the surface all along. Yet hidden inside today's astrology is one remarkable signal that almost everyone overlooks. Missing it could mean walking directly past the most meaningful message your relationships will offer throughout this entire year. We will come back to that shortly, because understanding it requires seeing everything that led to this exact point. Before we go further, think about your own emotional landscape during the past 2 weeks. Perhaps you've noticed an unfamiliar pressure sitting inside your chest. Perhaps one day your feelings seemed completely understandable, only to dissolve into uncertainty the next. Maybe you found yourself craving closeness, while simultaneously questioning whether anyone truly understood you. None of these experiences happened randomly. They were all responses to an energetic pattern that has been building since the very beginning of this month, and today is where every piece finally settles into place. The intensity you have been carrying was never accidental. It was preparing you for this exact alignment. Many people assume today's energy appeared suddenly, but nothing about this moment arrived without preparation. June has been constructing this experience since its opening days. If you have been paying close attention to your emotional life, you probably sensed each stage as it unfolded. The process began quietly when Mercury entered Cancer on June 1st. Conversations immediately became heavier, not because people suddenly changed, but because emotions hiding beneath ordinary words became impossible to ignore. Simple discussions carried invisible weight. Feelings that had remained unspoken lingered between sentences, creating the sense that everyone was communicating far more than they actually said aloud. Then came June 9th, when Venus united with Jupiter in a conjunction powerful enough to release emotions many people had been holding back for months. Longing became impossible to dismiss. The desire for genuine closeness intensified. A quiet ache emerged inside countless hearts, not always directed toward a specific person, but toward something authentic that many could feel without fully understanding. That hunger for real emotional connection became one of the defining experiences of the month. Only a few days later, on June 13th, Venus departed Cancer and entered Leo, transforming the emotional atmosphere almost overnight. What had previously felt private suddenly demanded expression. Instead of accepting hidden affection or uncertain possibilities, many people discovered a powerful urge to be seen, acknowledged, and openly chosen. Expectations surrounding love rose dramatically. Confidence replaced hesitation. Emotional needs that once remained silent now insisted on visibility. Standards did not increase gradually. They surged forward with unmistakable force. Then the month entered its most demanding chapter. On June 17th, Venus formed an opposition with Pluto, the planet associated with destruction, obsession, and deep psychological excavation. This was the moment when illusions began losing their ability to survive. Relationships lacking genuine stability started revealing their weaknesses. Conversations that had been postponed refused to remain buried any longer. Hidden struggles over control surfaced with startling clarity. Some people watched relationships they believed were secure begin breaking apart before their eyes. It may have felt as though life itself was taking something precious away, yet the deeper purpose was entirely different. Nothing meaningful was being stolen. Space was being created. Every emotional collapse that unfolded between June 13th and today served a larger design. The Venus-Pluto opposition became the examination. Today's Venus-Saturn Trine becomes the confirmation, but only for the connections capable of surviving what came before. This is where many interpretations of today's astrology become incomplete. You will often hear that the Venus-Saturn Trine simply favors commitment, harmony, or peaceful relationships. That explanation barely scratches the surface. This alignment is not effortless. It represents something that has been earned through emotional honesty and personal growth. Venus governs love, beauty, attraction, desire, and everything your heart naturally reaches toward. Saturn governs time, karma, responsibility, endurance, and structures that cannot easily be dismantled. When these two planetary forces unite through a perfect trine, they do not create something temporary. They construct something designed to endure. What is established beneath this influence carries extraordinary resilience. The significance becomes even greater because this trine occurs within the fire signs of Leo and Aries. This is not emotion stripped of passion. It is not commitment born from exhaustion or obligation. Instead, desire joins hands with discipline. Courage merges with devotion. The heart finally discovers a foundation strong enough to support everything it has been carrying throughout this month. At exactly 8 in the morning, when this trine reaches perfection, the experience of love itself shifts in a way that is immediate rather than distant. The change does not belong only to the future. It begins today. Once this doorway opens, there is no returning to the emotional version of yourself that existed before crossing its threshold. That previous chapter remains behind because the universe has spent weeks preparing you for this irreversible transition. Every emotional challenge, every uncomfortable realization, every relationship pushed beyond its limits has been leading toward this single moment when Venus and Saturn stand together in flawless geometric harmony. And despite everything we have explored, there remains one essential piece that almost no one is discussing. Earlier, I mentioned that today's most important relationship signal is hiding in plain sight. The reason it remains hidden is because nearly everyone is focused on Venus and Saturn, while overlooking the role of the Moon in Scorpio. That overlooked influence changes how this entire day should be understood, and it is the missing key that brings the full meaning of today's astrology into focus. The most influential force shaping today is not the one everyone keeps talking about. Nearly every astrology discussion is centered on the exact trine between Venus and Saturn. Yet another influence is quietly weaving itself into the fabric of this moment, and overlooking it would mean missing the emotional core of everything unfolding. As Venus and Saturn establish their remarkable alignment, the Moon is traveling through Scorpio, the zodiac sign most deeply associated with emotional intensity, psychological honesty, and fearless transformation. Its presence is anything but passive. Throughout the day, the Scorpio moon forms meaningful aspects to both Venus and Saturn, creating an emotional atmosphere that reaches far beyond simple harmony. What could have been interpreted as an encouraging relationship transit becomes something much more profound, a powerful process of emotional refinement that asks you to confront yourself before you can truly connect with another person. Scorpio accepts only one currency: complete honesty. Not the carefully polished version of yourself that feels safe to display, not the emotions that are convenient to acknowledge. Instead, it insists on uncovering the feelings you have buried beneath fear, pride, habit, or self-protection. It demands that you recognize what your heart genuinely longs for and what your soul has been quietly trying to communicate all along. Because of this influence, any promise exchanged today, whether spoken aloud or silently made within your own heart, carries extraordinary weight. These commitments are unlikely to remain superficial or driven by social expectations. Instead, they emerge through conversations, realizations, and emotional breakthroughs that many people spend years avoiding. The Scorpio moon ensures that whatever takes shape on June 25th rests upon psychological depth rather than temporary emotion. It insists that the structures represented by the Venus-Saturn Trine stand upon solid emotional bedrock instead of fragile illusions. This distinction matters more than most people realize, because lasting relationships rarely disappear due to a lack of affection. Far more often, they erode because truth was replaced by avoidance. Feelings remained hidden. Needs were never spoken. Masks became more familiar than authenticity. Today's astrology removes those hiding places. Every emotional defense that once felt necessary begins losing its power. Every comforting story you have repeated to yourself about who you want, why you hesitate, or what you believe you deserve begins dissolving under Scorpio's unwavering gaze. If you have been pretending not to care about someone, avoiding a difficult realization about an existing relationship, questioning a potential partner without admitting the real reason, or refusing to acknowledge your own emotional needs, today's energy makes continued avoidance almost impossible. The truth rises to the surface, regardless of whether you are prepared to welcome it. More importantly, the choices you make, once that truth becomes impossible to ignore, have the potential to shape your relationships for many years ahead. This is the hidden engine operating beneath today's cosmic alignment. Venus and Saturn provide the enduring framework, while the Scorpio moon guarantees that framework is anchored in emotional authenticity instead of wishful thinking. Together they create an opportunity that feels impossible to dismiss, especially for 3 zodiac placements that receive this energy with exceptional intensity. The first is Scorpio. If your sun, moon, or rising sign falls in Scorpio, today's message deserves your complete attention because it carries an urgency that goes beyond simple guidance. It feels less like a gentle invitation and more like the universe insisting that a long, overdue chapter finally begins. With the moon illuminating your first house of identity, personal expression, and self-awareness, your ability to manifest emotional change is operating at an extraordinary level. You are not standing outside today's energy, observing it from a distance. You have become one of its primary channels. Your emotional state influences everything unfolding around you, making your internal decisions especially significant. Yet the greatest challenge waiting for you has very little to do with another person's behavior. Instead, it centers on the protective identity you have spent years constructing around yourself. Deep inside, you already recognize the pattern. You build careful distance before others can disappoint you. You observe people closely, almost inviting them to prove your doubts correct. Sometimes you unconsciously expect them to fail because disappointment feels safer than vulnerability. That emotional strategy reaches its expiration point today. The exact trine between Venus and Saturn offers something remarkably uncommon: a relationship, an encounter, or an opportunity capable of supporting the emotional intensity that defines you without becoming overwhelmed by it. Yet receiving this gift requires participation from you as well. You can no longer remain hidden behind endless evaluation. The lesson shifts from constant testing toward intentional trust. For many Scorpios, trust feels unfamiliar because experience has taught you to associate openness with risk. However, Saturn in Aries is not encouraging blind faith. It is teaching courageous vulnerability. Those are entirely different experiences. Blind faith ignores danger. Courage acknowledges every possible risk while choosing to move forward anyway. Your personal timeline changes the moment you stop performing emotional invincibility and allow someone to witness the softer version of yourself that has remained hidden beneath layers of protection. Beneath the famous Scorpio resilience lives someone who longs to receive love without endlessly proving their worth. Someone exhausted by emotional examinations who quietly wishes another person would simply remain consistent without being challenged first. There is a genuine possibility that the individual capable of meeting you at that level is already closer than you realize. The only obstacle preventing you from recognizing them may be the emotional armor through which you continue viewing the world. Today opens a rare window for clarity, but windows do not remain open forever. The universe has allowed this lesson to unfold gradually, giving you repeated opportunities to lower your defenses, and that period of waiting now reaches its conclusion. The next sign receiving extraordinary attention today is Taurus. If you are a Taurus, this alignment places you directly within the center of today's unfolding story, because Venus, your ruling planet, stands at the heart of every major development occurring in the sky. Every significant Venus transit influences you more personally than it does many others, making today's exact trine especially meaningful. Recent events have already begun transforming your inner world. Less than 1 week ago, on June 19th, Chiron entered your sign, initiating a profound process of healing centered around self-worth, identity, and the beliefs you carry about what you deserve. That process is only beginning, yet today's astrology accelerates it dramatically. The Venus-Saturn Trine activates your partnership sector and your closest one-on-one relationships with unmistakable force. This is not a slow awakening. It resembles a room suddenly filling with light after remaining dim for far too long. Relationship patterns you previously accepted without question become impossible to overlook. The dynamics you convinced yourself were acceptable simply because they felt familiar now demand an honest evaluation, and as this realization continues unfolding, the next phase of today's message begins to reveal exactly what those discoveries are asking you to do. Once the truth becomes impossible to ignore, pretending nothing has changed is no longer an option. That is exactly where you find yourself now, Taurus. The light shining across your relationships has become so unmistakable that every compromise, every quiet disappointment, and every pattern you once excused is now fully visible. There is no comfortable shadow left where uncertainty can hide. This moment asks something difficult of you, because your nature has always favored stability, even when that stability quietly costs you pieces of yourself over time. You are often willing to remain inside familiar circumstances far longer than necessary, not because they continue to nourish your spirit, but because the thought of disrupting what already exists feels heavier than enduring what slowly wears you down. Familiarity has sometimes disguised itself as security, and obligation has occasionally been mistaken for genuine devotion. Today's exact trine between Venus and Saturn refuses to let those illusions survive any longer. It creates a clear dividing line between relationships that reflect the person you are becoming and those that belong to an older version of your life. On one side stand the connections grounded in mutual respect, authentic affection, emotional maturity, and the kind of stability capable of supporting your future. On the other side remain the situations you have continued accepting simply because changing them seemed too costly or too uncertain. The message arriving for Taurus today is not centered on dramatic declarations or overwhelming romantic excitement. Instead, it arrives through decisive clarity. This is the day when an unmistakable boundary must finally be established, or when complete confidence must replace hesitation with someone who has already demonstrated consistency, patience, and reliability through their actions rather than their promises. For some, that may mean ending an unhealthy dynamic with a co-worker whose behavior has repeatedly crossed emotional boundaries. For others, it may mean turning toward a partner who has quietly remained dependable through every season and finally allowing yourself to fully choose the relationship that has already proven its strength. Yet Saturn asks you to understand something that cannot be avoided. Every meaningful decision carries another decision hidden within it. To embrace one future is to release every alternative that no longer belongs in your life. That reality can feel especially challenging for Taurus because letting go has never come naturally. You often measure loss more deeply than other signs, making change appear more painful than remaining where you are. However, today's astrology reminds you that what waits beyond this choice is not uncertainty for its own sake. It is lasting security built upon truth instead of comfort. The foundation available to you now possesses the strength to support an entirely new chapter of your life, but only if you stop accepting partial versions of what your heart genuinely deserves. The universe is placing both courage and clarity directly into your hands today. The opportunity has arrived. What remains is your willingness to use it. As this powerful current continues moving through the zodiac, another sign finds itself standing directly beneath the brightest spotlight of all. Leo, there is no remaining space for you to minimize what has been unfolding around you. Whether you have admitted it openly or kept it quietly to yourself, this entire month has been reshaping the way the world responds to your presence. Venus is currently traveling through your first house, illuminating your sign, your identity, your appearance, and the energy you naturally project into every room you enter. Because of that placement, you are not simply witnessing today's astrology. You have become one of its most visible expressions. Since Venus entered Leo on June 13th, something undeniable has begun changing. Perhaps strangers have noticed you more frequently. Perhaps conversations have unfolded with unusual ease. Maybe opportunities have appeared from directions you never expected. Or perhaps people have responded to your confidence with an entirely different level of appreciation. Even if you've tried convincing yourself that nothing significant has changed, some part of you already knows otherwise. You have felt the shift. You have sensed the growing magnetism surrounding you. Yet there has also been a tendency to dismiss your own transformation, to reduce it, to explain it away, or to avoid fully stepping into the version of yourself that is emerging. That hesitation ends today. If today's astrology could be condensed into a single instruction for Leo, it would be remarkably simple. Stop minimizing your own light. Stop pretending your value is smaller than it truly is. Stop apologizing for occupying the space you were always meant to claim. The exact Venus-Saturn Trine on June 25th asks you one defining question, and the answer you give has the potential to influence your relationships well beyond this moment. Deep within yourself, do you genuinely believe that you deserve the love, respect, and commitment you have been asking the universe to provide? Not as a positive affirmation repeated out of habit, not as an inspiring sentence spoken without conviction. The question reaches far deeper than words. It asks whether your actions reveal the same belief your mind claims to hold. Saturn never rewards half-hearted certainty. Positioned in Aries, Saturn challenges you to demonstrate your self-worth through the standards you refuse to abandon. At the very same time, Venus traveling through your own sign quietly reminds you that you have always known what those standards truly are. They have never been hidden from you. You recognized them long before today. The only difference is that now you can no longer pretend not to hear them. For Leos already sharing their lives with another person, this becomes an extraordinary day for speaking your truth with calm confidence rather than emotional drama. This is not about issuing demands or creating conflict. It is about expressing your needs with unwavering honesty. It is the moment to communicate the qualities you require, the behaviors you can no longer accept, and the direction your own growth is taking. You are not asking another person to become someone. They are not. You are simply acknowledging the person you have already become. From that place of certainty, the relationship naturally reaches its next point of evolution. Either your partner rises to meet the future you are building together, or the existing structure reveals that it can no longer support the path ahead. Saturn's role within today's trine is to ensure that anyone capable of standing beside you after this conversation is contributing something stable enough to endure something designed not merely to survive temporary emotion, but to remain standing through the years still waiting to unfold. And as that realization settles into place, the next layer of today's message begins revealing itself. For those born under Leo who are still waiting for love to arrive, today's energy carries an even more personal message. This is not simply about preparing for a future relationship. It is about becoming fully recognizable to the future that has already been moving toward you. Jupiter now stands at the final edge of your sign, preparing to cross into Leo on June 30th, where it will spend the next year expanding your visibility, your confidence, your opportunities, and every area of life touched by your authentic self-expression. Because of that approaching transition, June 25th becomes something remarkably important. Think of it as the universe quietly observing whether the version of you standing here today is truly prepared to receive everything you have spent months or even years asking for. Love cannot fully enter a life where its owner continues making themselves smaller to protect the comfort of people who are intimidated by confidence. Genuine partnership cannot recognize you if you continue disguising insecurity as modesty or confusing self-denial with kindness. Today's exact trine between Venus and Saturn invites you to release that habit completely. This is the day when you step forward without apologizing for the size of your dreams or the depth of your desires. You no longer have to choose between extraordinary passion and lasting stability, because today's astrology insists they can exist together. You are allowed to seek devotion without sacrificing excitement. You are allowed to desire a relationship filled with romance, while also expecting consistency, reliability, and emotional maturity. Saturn speaks with the authority of experience, reminding you that commitment built on strength can endure. Venus whispers something equally important, that you have always been worthy of receiving exactly that kind of love. At this point, only one question remains unanswered. Are you willing to believe your own value deeply enough to accept what the universe is preparing to place before you? As powerful as today's message is for Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo, it would be a mistake for anyone else to believe they stand outside its influence. Every sign across the zodiac participates in the geometry created by today's exact Venus-Saturn Trine. No one remains untouched. The expression changes from chart to chart, but the invitation toward greater authenticity reaches everyone. Aries. Saturn continues occupying your first house, asking you to build a stronger version of yourself through discipline, responsibility, and deliberate action. At the same time, Venus sends supportive energy that softens your efforts without weakening them. The promises you made today carry unusual strength because they are far more likely to become lasting actions instead of temporary intentions. If commitment has felt difficult in the past, today's alignment offers a new relationship with accountability. Rather than resisting responsibility, you may discover yourself embracing it with surprising confidence. Libra, today's astrology shines especially brightly because Venus your ruling planet, stands at the center of the conversation. Through its harmonious relationship with Saturn, you receive both emotional confidence and practical structure, making this an ideal moment to define situations that have remained uncertain for far too long. Whether the issue involves romance, shared finances, professional agreements, or a conversation postponed because maintaining peace felt easier than addressing discomfort, today's energy gives you the stability necessary to speak with clarity instead of hesitation. Aquarius. Before Uranus became associated with your sign, Saturn served as your traditional ruler, making today's trine especially meaningful. The harmonious exchange between Saturn and Venus strengthens the foundations of your closest emotional bonds. Decisions involving your home, your family, or a long-term partnership carry unusual permanence beneath this influence. Choices made today have a way of echoing far into the future because they arise from careful reflection instead of temporary emotion. Capricorn. Today's experience may feel especially rewarding because Saturn naturally speaks your language. You understand effort. You understand patience. You understand the satisfaction that comes from constructing something brick by brick rather than searching for shortcuts. Today's Venus-Saturn Trine offers an unfamiliar but deeply deserved experience. Instead of treating love as another responsibility requiring constant maintenance, you are invited to simply enjoy its stability. Allow yourself to recognize that not every meaningful relationship must feel like another project waiting to be completed. Some foundations become strong enough that they finally allow you to rest. Cancer, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces each receive this alignment through different areas of life. Yet the lesson connecting all of you remains remarkably consistent. Somewhere within your personal chart, an important structure is being reorganized. It may involve relationships, career, personal purpose, daily routines, or emotional security, depending upon your individual placements. But the underlying message does not change. Whatever commitment you choose to make beneath today's skies deserves your complete presence. Saturn has little interest in hesitation or partial effort. Half-hearted decisions rarely survive beneath its influence. Only commitments rooted in genuine authenticity possess the strength to endure what comes next. And what comes next is exactly why today's alignment carries such extraordinary significance. Many planetary aspects appear, deliver a brief emotional experience, and quietly fade as new transits replace them. This one behaves differently. The Venus-Saturn Trine establishes something designed to remain long after the exact aspect has passed. Its effects continue unfolding because the days immediately following June 25th activate everything that begins today. On June 28th, Mars enters Gemini, dramatically increasing movement, conversation, decision-making, and the willingness to act upon ideas that previously remained only thoughts. The emotional realizations born today quickly seek expression through communication and decisive action. Then, on June 29th, Mercury stations retrograde in Cancer, encouraging deep internal reflection. Instead of rushing ahead without understanding your experiences, this retrograde asks you to revisit every emotional breakthrough, every conversation, and every commitment made under today's alignment. Reflection becomes just as important as action. That same day also brings the full moon in Capricorn, illuminating the structural consequences created by the choices initiated on June 25th. Under that full moon, the architecture built through the Venus-Saturn Trine becomes fully visible. You begin seeing which decisions strengthened your future and which ones demanded even greater honesty. Finally, on June 30th, Jupiter enters Leo, expanding whatever foundation Venus and Saturn established only days earlier. If today's alignment plants the cornerstone, Jupiter spends the following year building upward from it with extraordinary momentum. Relationships strengthened now gain room to flourish. Creative ambitions receive greater visibility. Personal confidence grows alongside expanding opportunities. That is precisely why June 25th deserves far more attention than it often receives. It is not merely an isolated moment of harmonious astrology. It is the beginning of a chain reaction whose consequences continue unfolding throughout the year ahead. And understanding that larger pattern reveals why every decision made today carries far greater significance than it first appears. It is not just a day, it is the cornerstone of everything that follows. The relationship you solidify today gets Jupiter's blessing for 12 months. The boundary you set becomes unbreakable. The person you choose, or the person who chooses you, enters your life on a foundation engineered by the two most reliable forces in astrology, love and time. This is your moment. Don't let it pass. The universe doesn't always give you a clear signal. Most of the time, spiritual guidance comes in whispers, in symbols, in moments so subtle you can miss them entirely. But today isn't subtle. Today is the cosmos, drawing a line and asking you to step across it. The Venus-Saturn Trine at 13 degrees of Leo and Aries is a once-in-a-cycle alignment. It is amplified by a Scorpio moon that refuses to let you lie to yourself, and it is surrounded by a planetary framework that is building toward the most expansive energy of the entire year for Scorpio. It is the moment to trade your armor for intimacy. For Taurus, it is the decisive action you've been postponing for Leo. It is the full, unapologetic claiming of the love you know you deserve. And for everyone, every single sign, it is a reminder that the most profound expressions of love aren't the grand gestures. They're the quiet, daily Saturnian choices to show up with integrity and to build something real, and to trust that what is built with patience and emotional truth will outlast everything that was built. Without it today, your love timeline shifts not because the stars are doing it for you, but because they're giving you exactly what you need: the courage, the clarity, and the cosmic architecture to do it for yourself. The only question left is, will you, if you're still watching? I would like to thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed the content and want to see more, please consider clicking the subscribe button. Your support is very appreciated. Feel free to share your experiences or thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, take care and subscribe for more insightful content.